Hey everybody, it's Brandon Lee. Welcome to the Digital Relationship Building and Personal Brand Summit. I'm here with my friend John Moore from Big Tin Can. How you doing, John?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's great to chat with you.
It is great to chat with you too. Now, as you know, as part of my introduction, before I give the full introduction, I asked you about your walk-on music, right? You're
Yeah,
walking on and you've got, so I'm going to turn on your walk-on music. We'll listen to a little bit and then we'll get started. Sound good?
love it. Love it.
Here we go.
The guy can play the guitar too.
You sure can. Well, and I'm running this on YouTube, and the video is pretty cool.
The video's awesome with the Navy SEALs up in the water doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this. And for those of you that are listening, that was For You by Keith Urban. John, why did you choose that song as your walk-on song? What does it mean for you?
It's really cheesy, but I'm going to share a little bit about myself and open up a little bit. I firmly believe that we're all here to help each other, and that sounds corny. We're also here to make a lot of money in our businesses and all of that. So I'm not a complete nonprofit kind of guy. But for me, the song really resonates with me because it's talking about sacrificing and working as a team for a common objective. So when I think about what I'm doing, Brandon, it's all about, in my enablement role at Big Tin Can, I'm entirely focused on helping our sellers, our marketing team, our customer success be successful. I'm a member of the team.
Right.
But I also, in my outward reaching role, where I spend a lot of time talking about enablement and how we can do it better and all that, it's about raising up the whole profession. It's not about me. It's for everybody. It's for everybody else to be successful. So for me, the song, it's a cool video, which we talked about 2 seconds ago.
Very cool video.
But it's also, it resonates with me because it's all about the team and raising up everybody collectively. And if we do that, I believe, look, there's going to be winners and losers economically and all of that. But as individuals, we're all going to improve, and overall the market will improve too. So the song means a lot to me around that.
That's awesome. Well, everybody, this is John Moore from Big Tin Can, and we're talking today about collaborating to raise up a profession. Now, one of the things that John has shared with me is that you get a bunch of, the challenge you saw was you get a bunch of bright minds together to collaborate. You create examples of what outstanding enablement looks like in order to share best practices. He just didn't see enough of that going on in his industry. And so he did something about it. And we're going to talk about that today.
Exactly.
So, John, thank you again so much for coming. Thank you for sharing that song and a little personal bit about you. I think digital relationship building is about being personable, about being real life. And
You got to at least bring the walls down a little bit.
that's right. That's right. And as we talked about before we hit record, is you and I have been on several Zooms. We've gotten to know each other online. We comment on each other's posts, but we've never met in person.
I know, and it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I like to share this story with people, and I apologize for going off track, but I've been doing what I've been doing for a while, and we'll talk about that. But I had this young guy in Greece. I mean, never met him before. He reached out to me on LinkedIn. He's like, John, I'm just starting to do this new revenue enablement role, which is some of what I talk about. And he's like, I don't have the first idea what I'm supposed to do. They hired me. They didn't know either exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And we picked up the phone and we chatted. And here's a kid in Greece, a nice guy. I shouldn't call him a kid, but a young guy. I'm older than Dirt. He's a lot younger. Never met, miles away, thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
And those relationships form. Just like this, it's so much easier to open up and have these great conversations and collaborative opportunities.
Yeah, well, keep talking about that because the topic we're talking about with you is collaboration to raise up a profession. So tell us a little bit what you mean about that and
Yeah.
what are you doing every day to accomplish that?
So let me give you a little bit of the backstory, which you presented really well, Brandon. But I'll just present it in my own words. So I work at Big Tin Can, and we create enablement software solutions. Okay. When I look at what's happening in the industry for practitioners, and I look at the research that's out there, great organizations like CSO Insights, which is part of Miller Hyman, which is now part of Korn Ferry, and probably part of somebody else at some point down the road, has done research over the last 4 or 5 years, and they consistently show that only about 20–25% of enablement teams are really knocking it out of the park. The rest of them are really sort of floundering, and what a shame, because if we could somehow replicate what those 20–25% are doing, the success will be phenomenal. And I worry about it from multiple levels. I worry about the fact that the practitioners, if you're not moving the needle, you're not going to have a job.
Right.
These are hard times. And I'm old enough, and I've been in enough positions that I've been without a job before. It's hard. It's miserable. It's terrible. So I would love to see what we can do to eliminate that. I'm also selfish. I work for an enablement vendor, an enablement software vendor. If they can't get the job done, nobody's going to buy our software. What's the point? So I've been seeing the research. I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of people at this point about what's happening, and really see the need for providing examples of what's working and providing people with frameworks, best practices, and demonstrable models of what works. So as I started thinking about how I wanted to use my social media presence, I got a little bit hokey, and I said, you know what, I'm going to brand myself the Collaborator. And the reason I chose to brand myself the Collaborator was I think a few things. I think there's so many self-proclaimed thought leaders and evangelists, which to me is such a crazy, hokey term, because thought leader, what's that all about? To me, it's a little bit, it never feels genuine, or it never feels as thoughtful as it should be. But to me, collaboration is really what it all comes down to: pulling great examples and ideas and having conversations broadly. That's what it's all about. And we can use these social networks to have these conversations to create a better world than we have today. From my slice of the world, from an enablement perspective, I jump on with this COVID madness and nonsense going on and everybody in lockdown. One of the nice side effects is that all these meetups that used to happen around the globe in a physical manner, I've been popping in on Zoom meetings because they're doing Zoom meetings. So I'm jumping in and talking to people in DC and the UK and all over the place that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm probably going off target, Brandon, but for me, it's all about bringing that collaboration together. So that's what I use the platforms for, is really trying to provide, here's an example of what's good. Because and my last point before I pause for a second is, I think there's great examples of analysts out there providing rich frameworks of here's what people are doing and here's what you should be doing. And then there's some great examples at the micro level in terms of example templates you can use. But it's that muddy middle between the high level vision and the detailed work. It's all that muddy stuff in the middle that people trip up on. Right. And if we can provide them pathways to really get it right, wow, we're going to transform this industry and help a lot of people out.
That's fantastic. So you said a lot there. Thank you for that.
I know. I'm sorry.
I got questions. I think everyone want to know as well. So the content you're producing and the conversations you're having, how would you differentiate that from, say, the content that your company is producing, like in a content marketing strategy that they're doing?
Yeah, what a great question. So my role is partially inward facing and partly outward facing. So let me split it that way for a second. So I'm the VP of Revenue Enablement. And in that role, I spend about half of my time making sure that our organization, with the team that I work with, is firing on all cylinders. So that's sort of inward content. And I do create some of that. I provide some of the training. I help out in those areas. And our marketing team, obviously, in terms of blog posts, which I write a ton as well, because as you can imagine, I can't shut up. I also can't stop writing. So, but when I do a blog post, for example, for Big Tin Can, I'll say, here's some great stuff that you should be thinking about, but it's not selling Big Tin Can. It's still thoughtful about, here's some great ways to follow this path to success maybe. And then here's how you can do it with Big Tin Can.
Right.
We think we have the best tool. Here's how we do it,
Right.
using our own products. But still, it's meant to be thoughtful, instructional, and informational stuff. But our marketing team obviously still creates the product sheets and all of that other stuff that goes up on the marketing site to make it look great and people to say that's awesome. The other part of my job, though, and it's a job that it's awesome. I didn't have to fight for it. I've had this passion about needing to raise up the profession. I brought this to the rest of the executive team, and they really bought into it, because we all recognize that part of our job, really, as software vendors in this space, is to make sure that the practitioners using our products and the businesses paying for our products are successful. So the other part of my job really goes to doing it without mentioning Big Tin Can, talking about what's good, trying to raise up and find examples of people doing phenomenal work. So like I have LinkedIn Live. I have access to LinkedIn Live. And I did a session yesterday with this fantastic individual from the Washington, D.C. area. We met at the national conference for sales enablement. And I'm like, I want you to tell that story about how you made your function strategic, how you're delivering value, demonstrating value. And we just spoke for 30, 40 minutes, but providing great examples. And it's not just me, some talking head saying, I'm so smart. It's, hey, look at this person. Here's some great examples. You can use it. So collaborating, raising up, and really trying to make a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, Brandon, or not.
Yeah, it does. It totally does. Because I think that when it comes to like digital relationship building, personal branding, internally there's this headbutt that could take place between marketing and then your sales efforts. Like, who's creating the content, who's approving the content, what do is this a good thing to be saying for our company and as a representative of our company? And that's a challenge. But you want to speak to that? Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I agree with you, Brandon. It's a tremendous challenge. And it's funny. From a messaging standpoint, I'm fortunate. I can get away with saying pretty much anything I want to say. But I'm in that special role that I'm trusted not to be, we were talking before we recorded. There are some people that can speak and be recognized for being positive, and there's others that can be real, the other side. I'm trusted to speak in a way that's respectful, valuable, and all that. But you need to provide, in my opinion, it's almost like providing the bumper. Have you ever have you ever gone bowling and had the bumpers?
Oh,
like
yeah.
little kids. Yeah, I mean, you want your people out there, you want them to be using the right messaging, the right branding, but still personalizing it to represent themselves and the customer needs. But what we try to do, and what I see some great companies doing, is providing those bumpers.
Right.
Here's the content you can use. Here's sort of the guidelines about how you approach it. And then we don't police it necessarily, but we give them the guidelines, trust them to be adults and grown-ups. And if they let us down, they let us down. We all learn from it, and we take appropriate action. But to be honest with you, we haven't had to do that.
Yeah.
People are smart if you give them those bumpers.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, like, you and I were talking before, that nothing has changed. It's just different, right? We train people to go out on sales calls, and when they're in a room or a boardroom or wherever making presentations, you can't police every word that they said, right? You got to trust that you've trained them well to speak properly and go through their sales protocols. I don't think social media and content is really much different.
No, I don't think it's much different at all. Now, there are industries, obviously, where you can get sued. There's compliance and legal concerns around that. And I'll ignore those for half a second and say, for the most part, though, we're sharing information about our products, about our solutions. We're talking about what we can do. to help them meet their business challenges, our customers and our prospects. So to your point, you have to give them the materials, the tools, and the training to be successful, and then let them go do it. That doesn't mean you don't do some amount of coaching and in the field, ride-alongs and other things to provide feedback after the fact. But I don't know about you. I would never want to be in a meeting and have my manager stand up and say, "John, that was the dumbest thing you've ever said." That just doesn't happen. So it doesn't happen on social media either. I have seen companies try to put these gates. You can't publish anything without these 3 levels of review. All that ends up happening is people get disenchanted, burnt out about trying to go through those gates. And the people that actually had some good information to share and could be making a difference for your business just give up because it's too hard.
Yeah. So you said earlier too that you've called yourself the Collaborator, and you're building a personal brand around that. So number one, tell me a little bit about how, like, what specifically activities that you're doing to support the Collaborator, and then let's get to the meat. How is that helping Big Tin Can and your role in the company?
Great stuff. So let me go very tactical for a second, and then I'll raise it up. I publish on LinkedIn a fair amount, and I try to be active in terms of adding value to other conversations. I'm doing the same on Twitter, on YouTube, and those are the primary platforms, right? So I do that. I use that brand that I built up, and I'm just starting, but I've got maybe 17,000 connections, followers on LinkedIn. And so it's enough that I can have a conversation and participate and get to know and talk to a lot of people. We all know you can't be friends with 17,000 people and know them in and out, but it's amazing how you can really start to be familiar with people and learn a lot. So tactically, I'm very active in terms of publishing content on those platforms. I'm generally trying to publish unique thoughts. That doesn't mean they're brilliant thoughts, but it means I've either written something for Big Tin Can, I've written a thought on a status update in LinkedIn, or I'm reacting to somebody else's content and I'm trying to add my message around it.
Right.
And in so doing, I'm staying in my lane. So let me say that too. I'm staying in the areas of enablement, sales, and marketing. I'm not jumping into political conversations and this and that. Yeah. But in doing that, I can tell you that just by that activity alone, people see me when we used to go out in person, and they would say, the Collaborator, and they would know who I was, which is both good and bad. But you would also, when you share something or share your thoughts, people instantly tie you to your past thinking and your past works. And they say, cool, you actually add value to the conversation. Now, I don't hide the fact that I work for Big Tin Can. I'm very proud and put, VP of Revenue Enablement at Big Tin Can right there as part of my title. And I'll certainly note, hey, we did this at Big Tin Can this way. I'm not trying to push you on Big Tin Can. You could do it a number of ways, but over at Big Tin Can, here's how we're solving this and thinking about it. Right. I hope that helps you. So always trying to bring Big Tin Can into the conversation if it's an example of something I'm doing or seeing, so it adds to the value as opposed to saying, oh, and check out Big Tin Can, we got the best product in the market. So there's that. The other piece of it though is in having these conversations and talking to brilliant people like you, Brandon, what happens is you start to get invited to have other conversations.
Exactly.
Which is amazing too. I mean, I've had, whether you think about customers or prospects, I've had them reach out and say, oh, I want to talk to the Collaborator and see what he thinks, which is great. Yep. Because they're talking to Big Tin Can. Or I've seen, I published my definition of sales enablement, and the best thing in the world that happened was not the best thing in the world, but one of the sales guys here was like, I was sitting in a conference, John, and they said, here's the definition of sales enablement published by John Moore at Big Tin Can. And they're like, hey, Jim, the sales guy, that's where you work, right? Yeah. And
Yeah,
it opened up conversations for other people in the business because of that.
yeah, that's so
So
cool.
there's sales conversations happening around me because I never sell. I don't. I'm not a seller. I never want to be a seller. My goal is to educate and all of those other things. But that the conversations happen around you and you get invited to things like this. I'm talking to you, a
Right,
really cool guy, about personal branding, which I would never be talking about, nor would I be raising up the idea of enablement necessarily to this community
right.
otherwise.
Yeah,
And I've got invited, just in the next 2 weeks, 2 invites to 2 different virtual events that I didn't even know about, but
right.
with really cool people that I get to talk to.
Yeah. So there's two things I heard there, and I'll put it in my language.
Yeah, please.
One is content helps you create conversations. And to extend it, conversations develop relationships,
Yeah.
and relationships lead to opportunities. Now, I will call you on one thing. You said I never sell, but I would say you're always selling. You're just doing it very strategically. You're doing it from a place of giving value and giving content. And all of that actually results in, I mean, you just said it. One of your sales guys was in a meeting, and your definition, if you never created that
Yeah.
definition, published that definition, shared that definition multiple times and talked about it, your name and that definition wouldn't have been on the board. And now one of your sales guys had an opportunity in a room full of people to go, yeah, I'm with Big Tin Can. John on our team created that conversation. And we don't know, I'm going to speculate though, but that person being singled out in the room elevated his standing in that room, gave him more opportunities, especially if there was 2 or 3 people in the room that he wanted to go talk to. At the end of that meeting, man, it was easy for him to go up and go, hey, I'm so and so with Big Tin Can, because he was pointed out in that group.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree. I agree with you completely. And it's also, I mean, it allows those kinds of conversations to happen in the moment, which are so powerful. And it also just builds awareness of our brand around us. So we're a public company, been around for 9 years, in a competitive space, and we're known not because of me, but there's some level of awareness of Big Tin Can because of the activities I'm doing in constantly trying to have good conversations, trying to show up and add value. You're right. It is selling, but it's not the sales conversation where I'm trying to get somebody to sign the check. But
right.
you're right. It still all comes back to selling.
Yeah, and I think, digital relationship building is the part of the sales process. Um, your personal brand is part of the sales process. Now, you may not have quantifiable data on this, but how much does, and we already alluded to it, but
Yeah.
the stuff that you're doing, the content you're creating, the engagement that you do online, how much does that help the rest of the company when it comes time for them to make a cold call or send out a cold email or message on LinkedIn and they say they're part of Big Tin Can? How do you think that all plays into it?
Well, it's certainly, again, it raises the awareness of the company
Right.
as a business providing value out there. So it does two things. It gets people to be aware of the company and then to associate the company with providing value.
Absolutely.
So I have seen, both in terms of activity, impressions back to our site,
Yeah.
and other things based upon, even just go very tactical, status updates on LinkedIn that have driven clickbacks to our site, that have gone into the lead funnels, that have caused conversations and ultimately closed deals. So there's certainly that level of activity happening. But when we pick up the phone, it's also, it's made it more comfortable for some of our outward salespeople. I mean, our SDRs who pick up the phone and just do cold calling all day, to say, hey, I'm from Big Tin Can, and have people know who we are.
Right.
Now, that's not it. In no means, my head is big, but it's not that big, Brandon. It's not because John Moore exists.
Right.
But a part of my job, 25% of my job is all about raising our brand. It's raising mine too in the process, of course. And another 25% might, out of that 50% that's outward, half of that's probably brand and half of that's generating leads.
Right.
There's certainly lots of qualified leads that show up because of the activities that I'm doing.
Right.
Not necessarily because of me, but because I have a great conversation with Brandon, and people see it and they go, "Oh, Big Tin Can, that interesting. Let me talk to them." Or I talk to someone, I do a webinar with Michael Brenner, like I'm doing next week, and people show up because they're like, "Well, Michael Brenner's cool. He knows everything about content marketing. Oh, who's this guy, John? He must know something too."
Right.
So it's also that associating yourself to smart people, giving back people that people respect, and all of it is just a very positive. I almost want to call it a circle of life, a circle of business life. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. Or the circle of trust. You and I, we
Yeah,
chat.
it's absolutely the circle of trust, Brandon, because you're right. People, I'll be honest with you. I want our business to make money. I want to reap benefits of that. But that's almost a side effect. I want to see the profession improve and raise up, and people have better paying jobs and more successful and impactful roles in the organization. And I mean that, and people understand I mean that. And because I say that and mean it, it associates Big Tin Can with that. So
Yep.
as a brand, we're getting, and it's going to take time, but my hope is 2 years from now, it's almost like that Miracle on 34th movie from the 30s, the 40s, 50s, whenever it was, where he's like, "You're sending them to another store because we don't have the best product?"
Right.
Yeah, because we want you to be successful. We want you to have the best experience. That's who we are. That's who I want us to be. That's who I want to represent and who I want our business to represent.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and I think bringing it all back to this digital relationship building and
Yeah,
personal branding, because they're so closely tied.
they are.
It's you being consistent and strategic with calling yourself the collaborator, creating the content, the engagement that you do online. That content creates conversations, right? Those conversations turn into relationships, and those
Yeah.
relationships create opportunities. So you could be, on a Zoom recording with Michael Brenner talking about content marketing and sales enablement. And it's with
Yeah.
you and Big Tin Can, and all of that peripheral value that happens across all levels of the company because it elevates Big Tin Can in the process.
Yeah. And we work hard to measure all of that impact.
Yeah.
But I'll give you this to think about. Some of it you can't measure. The reality is some of it you can't measure. And we use ABM tools to figure out impacts. We use all kinds of other cool technology. But some of it's also just that conference that we talked about where the sales guy goes, "Yeah, I'm from Big Tin Can."
Right.
We can't measure that. And if he hadn't come back and told me,
Right.
I wouldn't have necessarily known it. But that stuff happens. And
Right.
that's a rich side effect of all of this.
Yeah, I would be curious to see, and I don't know if you've measured this, but
Yeah.
in the time that you started being the collaborator and being very strategic about, posting every day, engaging every day, tracking those clicks from LinkedIn, your 17,000 plus network,
Yep.
tracking those clicks back to content on Big Tin Can's website, people that you're capturing, you put right back into your retargeting campaigns for the nurturing process.
Yes.
That number's had to go up. Like you have had to quantifiably influence that number.
Yeah, we've absolutely been able to drive a measurable increase,
Yeah.
a sizable measurable increase
Yeah.
um, on social and elsewhere. Because part of this is social, but when you start getting active on social, you bump into a journalist that says, "Hey, can you give me your opinion?"
Right.
And all of a sudden you're quoted by some magazine or online periodical or whatever.
Right.
And those click-throughs that come back to your site um, add up too.
Your relationships.
It's all relationships, and people want to work with people who can consistently provide them value, who can be responsive, and are not jerks in the process as
Right.
well. So all of that adds up.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other term that gets used a lot in sales and content marketing, everything is the known, liked, and trusted. And I think
Yeah.
there's consistency is a big part of it, and the quality of your content. I mean, you can be consistently posting, hey, you want a demo, and that's not going to work and nobody's going to listen to you.
They
But
will not.
they will not. But the consistency of posting and the tone and information sharing,
Yeah.
what happens is you're known, you're liked, and you're trusted. And that trusted is either are you asked to come on a an online thing and record and get promoted? Are you asked to have a quote for a news media outlet? Are you identified at a conference because somebody goes, hey, the collaborator, I know you, and you shake a
Yeah,
hand, get to know somebody. I mean, it's just that ripple effect. Some of it you can measure,
it
and
is.
some of it we can't, but it's still extremely valuable.
Oh, and it's so powerful. And some, and one of the things I've observed too, Brandon, is um, I spend a lot of time writing, and over time I've shifted back and forth between writing, 30-page guides to 500-word post and done all that. But one of the most meaningful and biggest impacts from an awareness, from a positive impact for myself and Big Ten Can has been video.
Right.
Doing LinkedIn Live, doing more video, and it's so obvious. But I've
Yeah.
had people say to me, "Oh, John, I wasn't sure how to read that. You're actually funny. You meant that." And oh, I get it. That was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're a good guy. And I'm like, hey, I'm not that funny. I'm a typical dad, so I tell terrible jokes. But
Dad, yeah.
um, but it changes too how they read you, how they read those status updates by just doing a video here or there as well, and adding a little bit of your own personality. We all have our personality, different kinds, but sharing that too, it just makes such a difference.
Yeah. So let's imagine somebody's watching this and
Yeah.
they're an executive, they're at a C-suite, something. They're like, okay, this conversation's kind of convinced me that I should be more active on social media for the good of my business. What advice do you have for somebody that's just trying to get started? You've obviously gone through some of the. I'm going to assume that you went through the should I, shouldn't I, how do I, what are people going to think and all that stuff. What's your advice for somebody that's like, I really need to do this?
My advice always starts with be strategic and think about what you want to accomplish as a result of it. Is your job to be the guy who opens a big tackle shop in the Ozarks, because that's a great show, in 5 years, and you want to post about fishing? Or is your purpose for doing this to build your personal brand and raise up and create more opportunities for your business?
Right.
So, and obviously the people here are most likely going to be thinking about their business, but really be thoughtful about that and think about strategically what lanes your business is in and what lanes you can speak with insight
Right.
from. Because if you're the CMO, you probably don't want to be talking about the C++ code that the team wrote 37 years ago. So be thoughtful, be strategic, and think about where you believe you can make impact. Because I do think it's important from the beginning to not go crazy, build dashboards all over the place, but just start to think about, I want to see my impact in terms of brand awareness. Maybe it's top of funnel leads, maybe it's whatever, and depending on where you want to talk to. But then also start small and incremental. Don't go out there and try to start writing a post a day. Don't try to do all this stuff. Be thoughtful in the sense of looking at who's already known as and I hate the term thought leader. I really hate the term, but who's known in
Yeah.
that space in a similar function, and start paying attention to what they're doing and start simple. Maybe it's, Brandon Lee is my guy that I want to be similar to. So I go on LinkedIn and Twitter and I start seeing what's Brandon doing. Okay, I'm going to comment, give it a like. That's awesome, Brandon. And build a relationship, a digital relationship with that person or that set of people
Yeah.
in a genuine way. Your goal shouldn't be to get anything out of it. It should just be, hey, I'm trying to learn. You can be honest when you reach a certain point of comfort with that person. Hey, I'd love to pick your brain maybe. How
Yeah.
did you go down that path and learn from them? But I think you start there and then start to create some unique insights. So if I'm sharing posts that you're putting out there, Brandon, try to add my insight to it. Smart post from Brandon. I've observed X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Doesn't have to be a blog post somewhere. It doesn't, and just add your little flair, your little insight, and be that kind of person who's slowly providing insights. It's slow. And that might be the first 2 or 3 months, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in your pace. And then slowly start to write a little blog post here or there if you have time.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there's some people out there doing a brilliant job that have never written a blog post or any of that. And all they're doing is writing insightful updates. Here's what just happened in the economy today. Here's my 10 viewpoints on that, and just sharing and be that person. I think if you follow a path like that, that's always going to be a recipe for success. I'll tell you, a decade plus ago, I experimented with Twitter back in the early days, and I had 80,000 Twitter followers, and I blew up the account because I was focusing in on government innovation and just a different area that was really hot at the time. And I was having conversations with the Secretary of the Navy, the US Secretary of the Navy, with the president of Rwanda in Africa. I was having some neat and interesting conversations, but it wasn't for business. So
Right.
it got to be way too much. But that path that I followed was very much the same. And I've used it, I've modeled that path, again, following the people who are similar to where you want to be and what you want to accomplish,
Yeah.
learning from them.
That's really good advice. And I mean, I've got, a founder of a software company that's done really great stuff. And I picked up a lot of little, oh, I see this because I watch his videos and watch what he's doing, how he's doing it. And then I start picking up new things and incorporate it in what I'm doing. And I mean, it's the way we learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. We need to learn, and collaboration is key, which is another reason why I was so thoughtful about the name. You can't do this alone. It's
Right.
a social networking is inherently requires a community to
Yeah.
be successful. And you're going to find that you have much more success, both in the short term and the long term, if you do it with a group of people who have similar values, similar purpose, and similar goals. So
Yeah.
look for those people early and
Yeah.
often.
And I know with the topic being collaboration to raise up an industry, I know for you, it's been sharing great content, engaging with people, answering questions, being available, not selling, but really building up not just the industry, but the brand of the company you work for. I think
Yeah,
that's huge.
and everything's a work in progress, Brandon, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, as social media changes, as digital communication changes, as email boxes are getting full and people are starting to, there's more text messaging and things like Slack messaging for marketing going out. I mean, everything's constantly changing. But
Yes.
what I love that you said too, for somebody that's starting is have a strategy. Know, what I like to tell everybody is you go back to that know, like, and trusted. How do you want to be known? What does it mean for people to like you? What does it mean for people to trust you? And we all know that if you're sales, 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 they may know you, but they're not gonna like you or trust you, and you don't get deals that way.
Yeah. Amen to that.
And we're all in this to make money, right? I mean, this is our jobs. We make money, we build companies, but yet we still have the ability to give value, share information, and be a great resource for people.
Yeah. I love that. Great summary, Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, John, it's been a fantastic time having a conversation with you. I really appreciate it. Before I kick out your Keith Urban for you as we exit, what's one last thing you want to say? Anybody that's looking at, I need to do better at digital relationship building, or I need to do something better with my personal brand to help me, fill my pipeline, or you know, close more deals, which I know we don't want to go there, but it's all for that.
No, but that's all part of it. Of course it is. We have to close more deals.
Yeah.
The reality is it's much easier to pick up the phone, whether it's a cold call or a known or person you've met at a conference, if you're already known for something positive,
Yeah.
or if your company is known for something positive. So you want to be the person, whether you're an SDR picking up the phone and making cold calls all day, or you're an AE walking into a meeting with a bunch of executives at a company you really want to sell into, you need to be associated with insight and value.
Yeah.
I forget who published this study, but there's been a few studies that I've seen where it says the first seller, when you're trying to, when a buyer's out there, they pushed out the intent to buy, the RP, whatever, to 10 different companies. The first seller that comes in and provides them insight and value,
Yeah.
the vast majority of the time is the company they end up going with.
Right.
At the end of the RP process, that's the company they go with, because that's the one that told them right from the beginning
Right.
that they're here to add value and to help them along the way.
Right.
So if you're coming in and just giving the standard pitch and not understanding who they are, if you're not coming in providing value with everything you do, you're probably going to be in the 90% of companies that get pushed to the back burner.
Yeah, that's really good summary. I appreciate that. Well, here we go with a little bit of Keith Urban for you.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I really appreciate it. And if anybody's listening and they want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Go on LinkedIn, look for John Moore, the Collaborator. I'm right there. And I'll tell you, I'll accept any invite that comes in and look forward to having a conversation. Don't try to sell me something in an email, but if you reach out and just want to have a conversation, something fun like this, I tell you every time I do it.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Maybe I'll bring you back. We got somebody coming on. We're going to talk about InMail and really talk about a lot of the bad habits and how to cure the bad habits that are taking place in InMail.
There are some really bad habits out there,
Yeah.
and I love talking to people, but there are some people you just delete. So
yeah, well, I guess how many InMails did you get just today that went immediately to the ready for a demo?
You know what? I'll say 90% of those InMails, if not higher, were, "Hey, John, I saw that post you did. It was awesome." Which I go, "Oh, okay, good. They're paying attention.
That's good.
Let me talk to you about our solution. It's really wonderful." And
Yeah.
you go, "Oh, you were so close there. You had me interested."
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch that just says, "Hey, we have the best." Very few of them lead with insight and spark interest.
Absolutely.
It's unfortunate.
Absolutely. Well, John, thanks again. I really appreciate your wisdom, your insight, and sharing. And anybody that you want to reach out to John, he's on LinkedIn, John Moore, the Collaborator, and he's also at Big Tin Can. If you want to look them up, it's bigtincan.com. Yeah.
An amazing name.
Amazing name. Can't forget it. All right, John. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on our next video in the Digital Relationship Building and Personal Brand Building Summit. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you.